That's great. Thank you very much, Rodrigo, for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Where are you speaking from?
I'm from Dublin in Ireland.
Oh, cool. I'm in Spain.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah, it looks much nicer where you are than where I am.
Yeah, it's a sunny day, but I'm coming from night shoots, so still, waking up.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for making the time then.
No
Well, so I kind of
worries.
wanted to start anyway and talk about the tone a little bit. It's not often that we see a dystopian film or a kind of post-apocalyptic film that has the warmth and some of the humor that this film has. It's so much about the human connection and the relationships that Teresa makes. What stood out to you when
Mhm.
you were reading that script for the first time?
Um, exactly that. I think the subject, I think the fact that, narratives about old age often, I think, reduce the elderly to memories and finitude. They're commonly limited to being portrayed as, living in the past or dealing with the imminence of death, and rarely you see them as protagonists of the present. And it, I thought that it was a very clever way to not only discuss ageism, which mainly what is being discussed in this film, but having a protagonist who decides, who's very lively, who's full of energy, and decides not to accept the fate that someone else has traced for her. And I think this film serves as an ode to freedom, and also sort of saying that it's never too late to find new meaning in life. I thought I loved the script when I read. I've been, flirting, work flirting with Gabriel Mascaro, the director, for a long time since I saw his first film, and we tried to collaborate in his previous film. It didn't work out, and then one day he called me up and said, "I wrote a part for you, and I hope you like it." And then I read the script, and it was I was very happy. It was a gift. Uh, Kadu is such a beautiful and not obvious part. It's a heartbroken traveling man. That the idea was to show a man suffering the pain of distance from his love, and quite the opposite of how films generally associate this type of character with the masculine freedom of a traveler, away from home pressures. But Kadu is different. This boat is sort of like his prison, and he's in deep mourning, and he will need to use supernatural forces to leave this life and accept what his heart's desire are. It's a man in touch with his feelings, with his fragilities, and I thought that was very contemporary. That was very, it's what we have been discussing lately.
Absolutely. And he is such an interesting character. He starts off quite closed off, and as they get to know each other, he opens up in more subtle
Yeah.
ways. How did you find that kind of shift and playing off Denise when you were acting?
Well, Denise is not only a brilliant actress, as you saw, but very beautiful human being. So she was very generous. When I got to my first day of shooting, she had been shooting for a week already, and she was so, I don't know, she was so open, and she was so excited to discover this relationship, and to it felt like the art imitating life, and the actress was also sort of, it felt like, oh, this is a woman that is so open and excited to discover, investigate, and it was wonderful to work with her. It was wonderful, and it made me think about so many things. And we were deep into the Amazon. We were in a river, and just the atmosphere around us. It was every day was a lesson, I think, for all of us, just to be immersed in that environment. It was wonderful. And yes, I guess Kadu, um, because they use the supernatural forces, as a metaphor. I think they both, um, they change each other. Like, in life, it's not one way, it's always a two-way. I mean, it should be, but I think their relationship is I think she learned things and he learned things, and throughout, even though they're very different, but those
Hmm.
are the best. So yeah, it's great. And then he will be able to, after this encounter, after meeting this woman, and he will be able to fully embrace his heart desire and go back to his love.
Yes, and you mentioned the Amazon as well, and the setting is obviously so important to this film.
Yeah.
And it feels almost like a character in itself, not just a background. Can you
Oh
talk a
yeah.
little bit more about the filming process?
Yeah. I've always been, I always fantasized about, oh, one day I want to shoot in the Amazon. I want to go there and immerse myself. I've been there before as a, just traveling, passing by, but this place is so unique and so powerful that you need to be immersed and you need to spend time there to understand the magnitude of this place. It's curious because the Amazon, as consumed in cinema and TV outside of Brazil, it's usually very idealized, always referred as the lungs of the world. And the film actually takes us into an Amazon that is simultaneously magical and industrial. It's not what we used to see, and it's
Mm,
almost surreal and deeply political in that way. To me, it was personally, um, just the week that I got there a week before and started to. I just said I would like to take the boat and get out there and just start to understand about all the get familiar with everything. And the owner of the boat, Seu João, took me. And you have the main river, and then you have the branches, the river, they kind of go inside the forest. And he took me all the way in, and then he stopped the boat, and then it was that just silence. And we stay there for the first 20, 30 minutes. I was freaking out. I was just anxious
mm,
because I'm so, this is a guy who lives in the city and is so connected. And I of course, my cell phone or anything. And, I started to itch. It was like, oh my God, this is kind of uncomfortable. That was my first lesson, to listen and just to be present. And oh my God, it was, and then after that, and then I looked at him, and he was so peaceful. He was just like quiet and just there. And then I started to listen, and then you listen, you know, leaves falling and the bird, and then you start to sync. It's a different rhythm, and then you start to realize, how powerful and how small we are. Um, and it was day after day, just diving in and understanding and feeling that place, and allowing the place to feed us. As you said, it's
hmm
the protagonist. I mean, of course, Teresa is the human protagonist, but nature is the protagonist there. And if you pay attention to the format that the movie was shot, it's the opposite of what you would expect, which is it would be a cinemascope, like it's
hmm
beautiful nature. The movie's shot, it's a square. It's very, and then you go like, oh my God, those guys were shooting in the Amazon, and you have that little window.
Yeah.
Yes, on purpose. And then I asked Gabriel, why you're shooting in this format? He says, because I want the human landscape, not nature
Mm.
landscape here. I don't want to get distracted. It's not a documentary about how beautiful the Amazon is. It's about human landscape. So I want to limit something that can be distracting and just focus on Teresa, Cadu, and all the other characters.
Yeah, I love that idea of the human landscape because the film is broken down into almost this kind of episodic structure where,
Hmm.
the moments that we have with Cadu and Teresa are so intimate, and then it moves on to the relationship she has with others. It doesn't kind of flip back and forth between them. So
Yeah.
when you were kind of looking at that episodic structure, did that inform how you approach the character a little bit?
Yeah, I knew that, there was the beginning, middle, and end, and it was short. I've done before. I've played characters that pop in, they got to be there and make the audience believe. You don't have the story to help you to build the character in front of your eyes. You just have to pop in and, oh, okay, that's the character, and then he does what he does and disappears. Those are very tricky because they have to be so solid because they don't have help from the drama to build. Oh, okay, now I understand this guy's doing this because of that. He's coming from that way. He's going. So to me, it was a. I almost like I approached as Cadu's story. This is
Mhm.
what he knew. He was, and then of course, in order to do that kind of to be a part of a film that has, I don't know, a few scenes, I need to build so much a backstory. I need to fulfill, to me, of course, just in order for me to dive and believe and to have something to fulfill me. I just work so much around because it's not there. So everything has to be built. And that's kind of how I approached Kadu. I knew we created everything about his backstory, his love, and I came up with all those things. You're never going to see them, but it's all about the world that you create and how realistic that person can be on the screen.
Absolutely. And for the kind of final question, I just want to ask a little bit because you're such a vocal supporter of your national cinema and you've used your platform to uplift other Brazilian films. And, I've seen you talk about The Secret Agent and I'm Still Here and other smaller films on social media and
Yeah.
everything. Now that this film is coming into that kind of contemporary Brazilian, internationally recognized landscape, do you feel like maybe there's a shared trait at all among the current Brazilian films we're seeing, or do you think that they're completely distinct?
A shared trait.
Mm.
Yeah, I think we have a DNA in our, in our films, which is they're usually political. They have the social, criticism, but they are also entertaining. Brazil, the last 20 years, uh, with all the ups and downs of the country, Brazilian cinema resisted and grew and found world recognition and is in a very potent moment right now. And I think that's a result of maturity, of trying and trying to find its own identity. And I do believe, of course, Brazil is such a huge country and culturally so diverse, that you go from north to south and it's very diverse. And, you get films from each part of Brazil, you will have a DNA from that part. But being a country that has so much disparity, social disparity, and economical, gap and class, and there's so many things, and I think that is um, expressed in our films. Usually, we are portraying in different ways, but we are portraying our reality, our culture, and like I said, because it's so big and so diverse, there's so many things that are mixed together. Um, I don't know if I answered your question, but I think that
Yes,
yes, we
yes.
have we share a common trait, but we also have particularities. If you get a film from the north of Brazil, you will have its own,
Hmm.
like the Blue Trail. The Gabriel is from Recife. Most of the crew was from the north of Brazil, and then we shot in the Amazon. So it's there. The DNA, it's there. It's impressed. It's printed. Um, yeah, I think so.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I loved the film
Oh,
and I
no
can't wait
worries.
for more people to see it.
Well, appreciate. Thanks for your time, Laura. Recommend to your friends too.
Absolutely.